Today I decided to give you guys a ranking of the Silent Hill films. This is a series of films based on the popular Konami video game series of the same name, and these films are essentially loose adaptations of the first three games. The first of these came out in 2006, and the most recent was released this year. These films rank from pretty damn terrible to pretty damn good, and so without further ado, I decided to give you guys my ranking from worst to best, starting with Silent Hill Revelation. This film was the only one in the series not to be worked on by Christoph Gans, and was instead directed and written by MJ Bassett. This film is basically a loose adaptation of Silent Hill 3, and that's not really a problem considering the fact that the third game is basically a sequel to the first game. But having said that, this is not a very good adaptation, or a very good movie for that matter. Now, there is some good in this movie. First and foremost, I do think that Adelaide Clemens is a decent portrayal of Heather Mason, aka Alessa. She definitely looks the part, and they cast it well, at least in terms of visuals go. And her acting is not great in this movie, but she's given it her all, and is probably the best part of the movie as far as characters go. Also, some of the settings do resemble Silent Hill pretty well, and I think there's some decent transitions here also. And it does capture some of the story beats of the third game, but not most of them. Other than that, though, there's really nothing to say good about this film. The film's budget was much lower than the first one, so it does look a little bit cheaper, but admittedly for $20 million, they did a pretty good job. However, there is too much CGI in the film. Really goofy looking creatures such as spider mannequins, some god-awful performances from the side characters, and how even Malcolm McDowell, who I think is a great actor, actually shows up for a minute in a completely ridiculous role, but at least he was probably paid pretty decently for just what I'm guessing was a couple days' work. The film is just completely nonsensical. It's a loose sequel to the first movie. It does acknowledge that film, but it seems to want to distance itself in a weird sort of way. The main character in the first film was Rose, who was pretty much a female stand-in for Harry Mason, only has one scene in this movie, and the fact that she's a much better protagonist than anyone in this film, it's just kind of a bummer that they basically put her character to the side. Sean Bean returns playing the character from the first film again, only this time he's changed his name to Harry. That's right, Sean Bean is technically Harry Mason in this movie. So basically, it's just a loose way to connect it to the first game, and he doesn't act or really look like Harry Mason, but I guess we needed a connection to the game for some reason. There are characters who were featured in Silent Hill 3 that basically get killed off almost immediately. Plot points are rushed and not developed whatsoever. And I know you could probably say the same thing about the other two films, but it's to a ridiculous degree here. Hell, when they're in the final sequence, the, I suppose, main villain, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, just turns into a monster and has a big fight with Pyramid Head, because fuck it, why not? Pyramid Head's gotta be in the movie. Silent Hill 3 is not my favorite of this video games, but it is still a really great entry. And if you're a fan of that one, I do say ignore this film. But if you want to watch a cheesy and gory 2010s horror flick, you could probably do worse. But from the bad performances to the poor adaptation of the story, the really bad acting, the cheesy effects, and the nonsensical plot, it doesn't really feel like it's building towards anything and just kind of ends abruptly. On top of that, is the main plot of the film shows Heather returning to Silent Hill to try to save her father, who has been kidnapped by the cult from the first film. However, at the end of the film, after saving him and I guess you could say defeating the villain, he decides to stay in Silent Hill to try to find his wife. And Heather just reluctantly agrees to it, and then she pretty much just ends up leaving with Kit Harington's character. So while she did technically defeat the evil, I guess you could say, her dad's still stuck in Silent Hill by the end of the movie, and we're basically right back where we started, just with slightly less bad guys to worry about. It's a completely nonsensical movie, and the ending even hints at a future sequel where they run into Travis from Silent Hill Zero, and you see the prison bus from Silent Hill Downpour, I guess, in a loose attempt to try to connect the non-Team Silent games to future film adaptations, which we thankfully never got. Just a silly film all around. But if you're here for some crazy gory action and some weird creatures, you could probably do a lot worse, but not one that I recommend. Up next, we have the original Silent Hill. Now, This film is the most critically and financially successful of the three films, and I do enjoy it, but I do have some problems with it. The basic plot of this film shows this character named Rose, as well as her husband, Christopher De Silva, and they adopt this girl who ends up having night terrors and sleepwalks while mentioning this town of Silent Hill. Rose decides to take her to Silent Hill in search for answers, and along the way meets a character named Sybil, who is this cop who was also in the first video game. And they must work together to try to find Rose's daughter, who had got separated from them. And all hell breaks loose as they run into monsters as well as cult members within the town of Silent Hill. This is basically a loose adaptation of the first game, and it's a decent one. It doesn't have Harry as the main character, instead we have Rose. But the plot is generally the same, only with Pyramid Head thrown in for no reason, I guess just for iconography's sake. And it's a pretty good adaptation. The biggest problem that I have with this film, though, is the cult is kind of uninteresting, and also Sean Bean's character, Christopher, basically just brings the story down. He just kind of goes around asking questions that we already know the answers to, and all his scenes could really be cut from the film. I get he's looking for his wife, and that's understandable, but it's a really kind of a dull character, and he's just kind of there. I think they could have at least reduced his scenes, but as it stands, it's almost a complete waste. That's not to say the film is bad. I actually find it rather entertaining, and it probably has the best production value of the three films, mostly due to the fact that it had the biggest budget. And Christoph Gans is a magnificent director, but the film is a little bit of a slog in the middle part, and I think you can probably trim a good bit of the movie out, and it would have flowed a lot better. Still a good film, and the most popular of the three, but personally my second favorite. But in first place would have to be Return to Silent Hill. Now, I recently did a review of this film, and this one is definitely my favorite of the three films. I think it actually flows the best, it's the most entertaining, and it's not bogged down as much as the other two. I do think that the first film is still magnificent, and this has the same director, Christoph Gans, but I think this one is not a better adaptation of its source material, but a more entertaining one. This is essentially a loose adaptation of the second game, and while it does miss a lot of the beats of that game, I do think there's enough here to be a decent, abridged adaptation of its source material, and an entertaining one at that. It's essentially just the bare bones version of the Silent Hill 2 story, but I think it's acted pretty well. I think the visuals are the best of the three films, and it also has some very cheap looking moments, but I think that Gans did a very good job with a very low budget, and this really does visually look like the source material to an impressive degree, especially considering the lower production budget of the film. I do think that there are flaws here, obviously. I think that some of the side characters are pretty much completely wasted, and it only is the bare bones of the Silent Hill 2 story, but it is a decent adaptation and one that I find very entertaining. It could have been better, yes, and it could have been more accurate to the game, which I would have preferred, but I still enjoy what we got, and I think it's an well-made film that hopefully gets better praise in years to come, and it's my favorite of the Silent Hill movies. Well, that's my list. I rather do enjoy two of these films very much, and I can get some fun with Revelation, even though it is kind of a schlocky movie. I think that this is a series that would do well on TV, and I hope maybe one day we'll get an adaptation of the fourth game as well. Maybe Gans could come back once again with a new writer and really deliver something special, but who knows. All in all, I do enjoy this series, and even though there's not a great movie here, there are a couple of good ones, which is better than most video game movies. I'm sorry for the long delay on this one. Before I go, though, I'd like to give a shout out to the Trashed Picture Show. This guy's given me several shout outs over the past year, and he has a really interesting channel. If you like videos that go in depth about different toys or even movies, you should definitely check out his channel. This has been a fun list to make. Let me know what your favorite Silent Hill game or movie is down below, or just give me your own list. I'm very sorry about the long delay with this video, but work has been very busy and I've just had a lot of stuff going on. Just life being life, so you guys know how hectic it can be out there. But I'll have the next one out to you much sooner. I've already have that one filmed and should have it edited pretty soon. And I thank you all for watching, and peace out.